Hello, everybody. Hello. It's me, Bill, the company's expert. And who wouldn't want to see me on a Friday? On a beautiful sunny Friday, you could be outside, you could be enjoying yourself. But no, you're here talking to me about job search. Well, it turns out a lot of people, because job search is upon us, and we're here to take care of it. This is a interactive Q&A that I do a couple of times a week, so this is your chance to ask me questions, anything to do with job search, anything to do with careers. If you're seeing my face, you should see a chat box somewhere near my face, depending on what device you're watching this on. This could be a tablet or phone or whatever. If you've been a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get in the chat and ask me questions. And I will do my best to help you out. That's what this is. I don't have an agenda of what to talk about. I'm purely here going off your questions and comments. So that's the deal. The title of this episode is Pass Your Next Interview, Live Q&A and Advice from me. This is episode number 101. We've done 101 of these. My God. So we will get into it. Yeah, and as always, a shout out goes out to my YouTube channel members. You guys are awesome. Join my channel, and membership has some privileges. Also to my Patreons, to my super thanks donors, and to you, my viewers and participants. You guys are awesome. Okay, let's get on with this. In the chat, we have Tong. Tong says, "Hi, Bill. Hope you've had a week." Yes, I had to have a week. That's the good thing about being here. You've had a week that made you as happy as a clam. Wow, that's saying something. I've heard that expression before, happy as a clam. Now, I don't know why clams would be happy, but apparently somebody in the past really got into this and made it an expression. So that's good. Yeah, I'm having a great time, Tong. Hopefully you're doing fine. We're here to talk about job search, job interviews. You know, I do a collaborative live stream every couple of weeks with another YouTuber. Her name is Abby. She's from the YouTube channel Life Work Balance. Not work-life balance, life work balance. And I believe her background is in psychology. And I always thought that those two kind of go together because psychology and job interviews really overlap. You know, there's so many theories about like how you can spot talent, which is what a job interview is. You know, you're trying to assess somebody by, you know, sitting down and talking to them for like half an hour. And, you know, there's so many theories over the years about like how you can do this. Basically, they're trying to get to know you without actually getting to know you because it would take time to get to know you, right? And they don't want to do that. The way recruitment and selection are evaluated is all about efficiency, right? So they're trying to fill vacancies with candidates as efficiently as possible. That means that they have to put as little work and time into it as possible, right? And something I've noticed over many, many years is that the way that they evaluate how good of a job they're doing in the recruitment and selection department of companies is it's very strange because they can't actually evaluate if the employees that they picked worked out because, you know, and rightly so, recruitment and selection says, look, we hire them and then we give them to their managers, right? Like they then start in their job and they have to do a job and they're getting compensated a certain amount for the job. We don't have any control over that. And then, you know, what's the number one reason why people leave jobs? It's usually because of a bad boss. That's the number one reason. So, you know, knowing this, it's like you can't blame the recruiter who hired somebody if that employee then leaves because they don't like it there. You know what I mean? That's the fault of the manager. That's not the fault of, you know, we picked the wrong person, right? So they evaluate recruitment and selection not on whether the employees work out or not, but they evaluate them on how much time and effort and money, therefore, it takes to fill positions. So the point is you could do a terrible job and get people that are like totally unsuited to the roles that they're placed in. And you could say, hey, not my problem. You know, so it leads to some interesting effects, put it that way. And therefore a lot of questionable theories, psychological theories, have been proposed for how you do job interviews and stuff like what you look for. Some of these more silly questions that they ask, have come out of that. A lot of these, like even in the 70s, asking questions like, if you could be any animal, what animal would you be? And like all this kind of stuff, it comes out of that. It's like, it reveals this about the candidate. And now we know how they think. Therefore, we can predict if they will be a good employee or not. And it's just like, what? Completely flawed thinking, by the way. And time has shown that. Get in the chat and let me know if you have questions. I'm here talking a whole lot of crap just because I have no questions to answer. So get in the chat and we will get into this. As always, if you are looking to get hired and you don't know what to do, you're feeling confusion, you are not understanding where the jobs are, how to get them, what to do, check out that course. I have a Get Hired course. It's all my advice in one place. More about that later. All the links to my courses are in the description box under this live stream. Yeah, so while we wait for the first questions to roll on in on this beautiful Friday, at least where I am right now, it's beautiful. It's sunny. You can see behind me. That's not saying much, though. Where I live, it's sunny a lot of the time. That's one of the reasons I live here. Yeah, so anyway, a lot of questions pertain to the job interview questions. Everybody knows the answers to the standard job interview questions. Things like, tell me about yourself, right? And yes, that is a question. Because even though it's a statement, it's then like a trigger for you to then respond, right? And they're going to be evaluating you on your response. So that's the number one job interview question of all time is tell me about yourself. The icebreaker, right? Usually question number one. That's usually the first question. Does anybody know the last question in a job interview? It's usually, do you have any questions for us, right? That's the last question usually that's asked. And that's an interesting question because a lot of times candidates lower their guard for that question at the end. They think that like, the interview's over. This is just kind of like we're wrapping it up. So in a way, I'm not being judged anymore. I'm not like put on the hot seat. They're genuinely asking me like, do I have any questions? Like, so this is no longer the interview. You know what I mean? Like the interview is when they ask me questions. Now this is sort of like the chit chat at the end where I get to ask questions. And what a lot of candidates don't realize is that, no. You've misread things. You're still in the hot seat and you're still being judged. Now, the type of questions that you choose to ask them is going to signal things about you, right? So the way you answer that question is every bit as much a performance as were all the other questions, right? So if you say like, something like, okay, do I have to work till 5 p.m. every day or, something, it's like you're signaling things about you. They're thinking, oh, okay, you're looking out for yourself. You don't seem to care about helping our team and wanting to contribute. So, okay, fair enough. We're getting a glimpse as to who you are. And trust me, they want you to think like this. They want you to feel that, the guard is down and that you can just let it all hang out and sort of reveal who you are without any, without any worrying, without any scrutiny. That's what they want, So I've been thinking about doing another video answering this question because taking that into account, you need to signal the right things through your questions. So, for example, you could think like, okay, if I can ask 3 questions, what should be those questions? Well, they would probably address what are the top 3 things that they're looking for in a candidate, right? Do they want a candidate that, is only in it for themselves? No, they want a candidate that genuinely wants to contribute. They feel good about themselves when they feel like they're helping out, right? That's probably a good thing to have in a candidate, right? Okay. Then you want a candidate that can do the job. Like there's no concern that like, oh no, I don't know if I can do this, right? No, they got this. This is not going to be a big challenge for them to do the job and do it well, right? So if you could ask a question that signals that, right? You're not like worried about can you do it? It's like, nah, you got this, right? That would probably be a good thing, right? And then what else do they look for in a candidate? Well, they look for a candidate that, is going to come in and not rock the boat, is going to get along with everyone, is going to care about getting along with everyone, right? Especially their boss. So if you could ask something that signals that that's you, you're tuned in to like, okay, when I come in, I want to like, have it be smooth sailing for everyone that's got to deal with me, right? And that's a priority for me. And I'm asking questions about that. How do you, what's the communication style here? How do you resolve issues here? Like things like that, right? So don't let your guard down on that last question of the interview where they say, do you have any questions for us? It's every bit as much as a performance as the entire job interview before it was, okay? I've seen a lot of candidates sort of make that blunder. They think, oh, here's a chance for me to ask what I really want to know, and in so doing, signal all kinds of negative things about them when they blow the interview. So I was going to do another video about that. Anyway, we have some activity going on. Thanks for everybody who's participating. Karam165 sent a super chat. Thank you, Karam. You're awesome. Says, could you talk about how most managers want a yes man more than anything else? I don't see how a company can thrive with just a bunch of yes men. Okay, Karam. Congratulations. You have just taken your steps into a larger world. Now, I get a lot of feedback from job seekers, okay? And it's interesting seeing the perspective of a lot of job seekers, okay? Because when you don't know about things as a human being, you tend to fill that void with like conspiracy theories and mistrust and paranoia. This is a well-known aspect of human nature. If a company doesn't communicate to you about what's going on, what happens? Well, you start to get paranoid. Oh, there's change coming, but they won't tell you what it is. It's like, oh, that's not a good sign. Are they fixing to fire me? Maybe they're going to fire all of us. That's how human beings tend to behave. In a vacuum, we tend to fill in the blanks with paranoia and suspicion and like negativity, right? So a lot of job seekers don't understand the perspective of hiring managers. If you're the boss and you're trying to hire someone, you've never been in that position before. You don't know what it's like to, you have all these people that want to work for you, but you can only pick one. Sometimes you're not hiring and you can't pick any, but you can only pick one, and it sucks having to turn people down. You don't enjoy that as a normal, well-adjusted human being. But, the way people handle that is that they don't sort of cozy up to you just then to say no later on. That makes the negative, like the no, even more unpleasant for both parties, right? They'd rather like keep you at an arm's length and then say no later, and it's less of a big deal, right? And they have to say no to everybody except one person, ultimately, right? Okay, so one of the things that a lot of job seekers don't understand, like a lot of them do, but a big sort of point of misunderstanding is the whole like yes men thing, yes man, okay? Now, imagine this, okay? You want to hire an assistant, whatever you do, to just help you with whatever it is you do in your life. You need an assistant. And you have a little bit of money, you can hire an assistant. Now, what you've done is you've put up a job posting and you've got strangers applying, okay? Now, a lot of these strangers that you don't know, okay, they have the qualification, they have the technical qualification to do the thing that you need done, right? And if you've ever done this kind of thing where you've hired someone, what you'll find is that there's a lot of people out there that have the technical chops that you're looking for, okay? So it's not too much of a stretch to find someone who's qualified, okay? So you got a lot of people that are qualified, and almost any of them would do, right? In terms of technical qualifications, right? But think of what else you're looking for, okay? Would you want to hire someone that they're technically qualified to do the job, but when you give them something to do, they always argue with you? They say, look, I got some skills here too, and instead of just blindly obeying you like a automaton, I'm going to give you my take on this. Have you considered this? Maybe it'd be more efficient if you did this. The problem with what you've just asked me to do is X, because I might run into this problem. Have you considered that before telling me that you want this done? Right? Now, the way it works is that, and I'm not asking you to try and visualize this in a boss. I'm asking you to picture this in your own life, okay? A lot of times, your attitude is simply like, look, this is what I want, okay? I don't want a debate. I don't want a discussion. I don't want any kind of pushback. Just please go and do what I say, right? And if every time I come up to you, I feel like I'm going to have like a sort of a minor argument or discussion on it, sorry, that's not what I'm looking for. This is supposed to make my life easier, not give me someone else to kind of argue with. You know what I'm saying? So, in the real world, you end up rejecting candidates because, let's say, on paper, they got all the technical chops, right? But in the interview, and this is like your first impression of them, you maybe ask them a question. You say like, I don't know, tell me about yourself. Or like whatever question. And they argue with you. They say, well, okay, well, how do you mean that? Do you mean it like this or like that? And you say, well, I don't know. I mean it like it's open-ended. You can answer any way you want, but I guess I mean it this way, I suppose. And they say, okay, but like, if you mean it like that, then, are you talking about this or that? Because you need to specify, right? Now, is that person like, is there any problem technically with doing that? No. But what is going on is that person is making a first impression. You don't know who this person is, but the first thing you said to them, they had a problem with. They didn't just do it. They came back at you with 2 additional questions that lengthened the whole process, that kind of put you on the spot, because you're being questioned, and it almost seems like you're not giving clear instructions when you think you are, right? So then, eventually what will happen probably is the interviewer or the manager will say, no, I'm sorry, it just isn't a fit, right? Everybody loves that, right? And then you go away and you say, well, they just wanted a yes man. Now, I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but I'm saying that's a very common thing that I've seen. It's like, they just want someone to kiss their ass, and they wanted a yes man. And it's like, no, that's not what was going on there. I need an assistant. I need someone that can just say, here, can you go do this, please? And they say, yes, sir. That's not being a yes man. That's just doing your job. You know what I mean? I got like 40 things to do. I'm asking you to do one of them for me, and I got to now deal with the other 39, right? So that's an example. I'm not saying this is exactly what happens in every case, but I'm just saying that's something that's quite common. So that's something I've heard quite a bit about, okay? So agreeableness and getting a good vibe from someone is very important. One of the number one reason that why people leave jobs is because they don't get along with people. Usually they have a jerk of a boss or something. The boss doesn't get along with them, So having that good working relationship is important. It's usually the reason why people don't work out in jobs. It's the number one reason. So when they're getting a glimpse of that right in the interview, that doesn't bode well, So hopefully that makes sense. Does that kind of answer your question? Obviously, it's a big topic. There's many different flavors of this, many different situations, scenarios, but that's kind of a very common one. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And thank you for the super chat. Feel free to ask up any follow-up questions you might have. Louisa says, "Hi, Bill. I wonder if it's a good idea to apply for graduate programs that start from next September. I have no work experience, so it's hard to get hired at the moment, but waiting for another year is also a pain." I remember something my mother told me. I never said this before. My mother took a degree in chemical engineering. She had a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering, and then she tried to find a job that year or whatever and couldn't in the summer, so she decided to take a master's degree. And that's a very common scenario. A lot of people will substitute education for work experience if they can't get hired. That's a very common thing. So it's not a stupid idea. Like, it depends on your personal finances and all that kind of stuff, like if it makes sense to do. There are alternatives if you are looking for an alternative. One general alternative is, like, you say you have no experience, okay, or no work experience. Now, depending on what area you're in and your situation and all the details, what may be possible is to do things on your own, okay, that pass for work experience, so that they are things you can put on a resume and therefore impress somebody. Also, things you do on your own can have intrinsic value. Like, it's not that you're trying to impress somebody by having done it. The things you've done actually lead to good things. Either they make money for you or they get you hired, like directly, things like this. So those can be demonstrations of your knowledge. If you went to school to learn how to do something, right? Try and apply that knowledge. Write articles about it. Do case studies about it. Do work for free, or things like this, just to sort of show off your abilities. It gives you experience. It is something you can put on a resume, and depending on what it is, you could work for people or create relationships with people that can then give you a job, or they could write you like letters of recommendation or endorse you in some way. Some people go the full bore and they try and do some kind of entrepreneurial venture. That's something else I talk about, by the way. Not for everybody, but some people are into that, and it makes sense depending on their field. So these are all alternatives you might have if you can't get hired in the moment, right? It's a bit of a cliche, but they say, become a thought leader, like write articles, talk about that. It is possible to do that in a smart way that actually does get you somewhere, if you go about it a certain way. But these are alternatives to just blindly going back to school, if you're doing it as a default thing and not because you really are into it, or you're following a plan. You know what I'm saying? So there's several things there. I can't tell you if it's a good idea for you or not, but these are some other alternatives. If you do want to share more about your situation, we can maybe get into it. So that was Louisa. Tong says, "This week I had an interview. They asked me the generic, 'Where do you see yourself in 6 months?'" Oh, is that okay? Usually it's 5 years, but I guess 6 months. I asked them where they see the ideal candidate and department in 6 months. Then they told me, "Hold my questions to the end. This has happened a few times. Is it a bad idea to try this approach with a new grad?" Well, listen, I do videos on all the job interview questions. Go and watch my video on where do you see yourself in 5 years, which is like the full version of that question, right? Same idea. Insert whatever time period, Listen, what they want is they want to know that, you would be working like there, like for example, they're considering giving you a job, right? What they don't want to hear is like when you say, where do you see yourself in like in the future? You don't say like, oh, somewhere far away from here doing some completely other thing, because that signals that you're not suited for this work. This is not what you want to do. You really want to do that other thing, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's what they're looking for. Like if you're applying for a job as a technician or whatever, and they ask you, where do you see yourself in, 6 months or in 5 years or in 40 years? You say, well, I see myself working as a technician. I like I'm fascinated by the role of the technician because it combines like sort of technical knowledge with hands-on ability. That I have both. I consider those very valuable, especially in that combination. Those two separate skills combined, I think, lead to some pretty awesome abilities. And I've been tinkering with stuff ever since I was a little kid, and this is what I want to do. And so I see myself working as a technician, usually like probably in this field, right? Probably in this way that coincidentally lines up with this job, right? And then the recruiter says, oh, okay, so this is kind of like, you're suited to this. This is what your ambition is and stuff, right? So that would be what they're looking for, right? It's a question to assess fit. Now, as a general rule, over and above that, they don't like it when candidates throw questions back at them generally, right? You know what I mean? Like if they say, tell me about yourself, and you say like, sure, you tell me about yourself first. It's like, no, fail, right? Right? So generally try not to do that. Like, don't say, okay, well, what does the ideal candidate see themselves, and then they say, well, they see themselves as this. Okay, ditto, me too. Yeah, they can see through that. That's not really what they're looking for. Okay. Hold your questions till the end. That was like a Willy Wonka thing, wasn't it? Someone asks a question, they say, I'm sorry, all questions must be submitted in writing, right? Which is perfect, by the way. But hopefully that makes sense. Onion 424. Is that like the Tascam 424? Go look it up. Says, hello, do you have any tips for researching a company before an interview? I usually read their website, which usually teaches me nothing. Well, it teaches you the fine art of public relations double talk. Yeah. It teaches me nothing, and I can't be bothered to read their 200-page yearly report. Yeah, read their prospectus. Here's what you do, okay? There are some websites where people can submit reviews of companies. They're not like the pinpoint accurate. They're, it's like a lot of disgruntled employees will go on there and just unleash about like the company that they just got kicked out of or they left or whatever. So there's a lot of that, but you can do that too. Okay. Another thing is you can go on LinkedIn and you can do a people search for the company and you can see what types of people there are there. And, once again, you may need the premium version of LinkedIn to do this properly. If you do, get the free version. Like they offer here's a free month of the premium LinkedIn. Just sign up for the free month and then cancel before the month ends, and then you're not charged anything. And look at the people that are in the company, right? Now, if they have vice presidents that have only a high school education, that tells you some stuff, right? If you look at several people and they all are only there for about 6 months, that tells you something else, right? You know what I mean? So just look at several people look at the profiles of several people that have been there. That can sometimes yield some interesting insights. Okay. And do a ChatGPT thing. Like just say, ChatGPT, I'm in this city. I'm in this industry. Now, this company, can you give me 200 words on this company? What's notable about it? Or give me an overview of them. That would be the absolute basic thing to do, right? And you do that, that's plenty. That's good enough, okay? The only other thing you would need to do is if you know the name of the person that's interviewing you, if this is going to be for a job interview, look them up. Look up the people. And if you don't know who's going to be interviewing you, ask. Okay? Because if you know who you're talking to, that helps you do better. If you know they're a recruiter or they're the owner, you're going to give two different answers depending on who's asking, right? So that's what I would say about researching a company. Hopefully that makes sense. Louisa says, hi, Bill, do you think it actually makes a difference writing cover letters for a job application? Does any recruiter really read it? Yes and no. Some people do, but you're right in being suspicious about it because the cover letter, like it's a dinosaur. It's something that was created for a very specific purpose before we had computers on every desk, right? It's when you used to send in job applications by putting your resume, you print it out and you put it in an envelope and then you put a stamp on it and send it through the mail, right? The cover letter goes in with your resume to explain, like, I open a letter, I get a resume, what's going on? What's this for? It says like, well, hello, I'm applying for this job, as advertised here. This is why I'm sending you my resume. I think I'd be a great candidate for it. Here's, so you got my resume, and then, if you need anything else, please let me know. What struck me about this role is that you're looking for someone who can do this, and I have that very specific combination of skills, so there you go. If you should need anything else, let me know. Here's my full contact information. Have yourself a great day. Like, that was the purpose of the cover letter. Now, it kind of doesn't make sense in this day and age when you're submitting on a website or you're sending an email to someone, like they know why they're getting a resume, you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty obvious. So therefore the cover letter doesn't really have any standard purpose anymore. So some people don't require it. Other people do, and they just want a very brief thing. Other people, they want, it's like almost like a second version of your resume written out in paragraph form, There is no standard about like what it should be or how important it is. Everyone's got their own take. And that's consistent with hiring in general, where every single employer, and more specifically, every single individual has their own perspective on, what makes somebody hireable and what doesn't, right? There is no standard. That's why you apply for one job with a resume, you get rejected outright. You apply for a different job at a different employer, they hire you. You haven't changed. It's that these people have different perspective as to what makes somebody valuable. You just happen to tie in with what these people think is valuable. Same with a cover letter. Some people think it's pointless. They don't require it. Other people, they put a lot of emphasis on it. So hopefully that makes sense. Tong says, when applying for jobs, do they have a place where you have to manually enter your work experience? It's very tedious and makes a person lose hope for joy in the world. Is this something that needs to be done, or why does this exist? You're talking about like re-entering all the information from your resume? Okay, Tong, here's the deal. The reason why they do that, the reason why they do that is because there's an overabundance of candidates applying for posted jobs. Like, you're getting something like I don't know what the average is, but it wouldn't surprise me if like 800 people were applying to a lot of online jobs. That's the volume of applications. So as a result, number one, they can afford to be very, very picky and get you to do all kinds of stuff that one might regard as being unreasonable, right? They do it because they can, because it makes their life easier. They don't have to read your resume. They can just, have a computer scan, like, what your qualifications are if you enter it in all these different fields. And that's going away, by the way, because like AI now can extract that, out of like a document. They don't need you to put it into separate fields, So they do it because they can, because it makes their life slightly easier. And they really don't care about how tedious it is for you. The other reason is because when you get 800 candidates applying for a job, you would suspect that some of those candidates aren't really super interested in this specific job. They're applying for everything. Like, just, I don't care what it is, just apply. They don't even remember they applied for it, right? But presumably other candidates are really, really into that job specifically. They really want that job. They're specifically tailored for that job, so they care about it, right? So to try and separate like the sort of casual applicants from the more dedicated, serious applicants, what they do is they make you jump through hoops. They make you like do all this stuff, right? And the theory is that only the serious candidates will actually do all that stuff because it's so tedious and cumbersome and labor intensive that most people will give up. They'll say, screw this. I'm not doing all this crap just to apply for this, right? So they give up, right? So what you're doing is you're sort of like, it's actually like the first stage of filtering. So instead of having 800 candidates, you got 200, but those 200 all went through this lengthy process, thus signaling that they're at least somewhat interested in this specific job. You weed out all the casual, applicants that don't really care. They're just applying for everything, right? So that's the other reason we're seeing employers do this, right? So it's really fun, right? The other thing that's going on here, just so you know, okay, because you're signaling to me that you don't know this, most jobs out there are not posted, and you don't do this to get most jobs. This is only how you get posted jobs. Most jobs, they're not posted. They're not on a website. You don't have to fill in an application. They're sort of off the grid, right? The job exists in the mind of the hiring manager. They haven't posted it online anywhere, right? The reason why they're not posting it online is because they don't need to post it online, because every time they mention to someone near them, oh yeah, we got to hire another person for this, it's a desirable job. It's a good job that pays really well. So, when somebody hears about that, they go, hey, I have a brother or a friend or an ex-former coworker. They'll be perfect for that. Shall I tell them to get in touch with you and send you a resume? So you don't have to go out of your way to find candidates. There's a lot of eager, enthusiastic, qualified candidates that that are coming your way anyway. You don't have to then spend money and deal with recruiters just to like post it publicly to get strangers to apply. You've already got people that have like personal recommendations from people you know and trust applying, right? Now, those are called hidden jobs. It's a stupid name because they're not hidden. It's just that they're not like broadcast, the way you get those jobs is some form of networking, right? Those jobs exist. You can get them. You just go about it in a different way, okay? And it's usually a much more positive process too. Like as if everything I said wasn't enough, it's usually a funner, more positive process to get those jobs. People don't treat you like cattle. Usually they treat you like a human being. They treat you like you're a referral. They invite you in. Come on down. We want to talk to you. I'd like to talk to you. Can you make 2 p.m. on Thursday? Like that kind of thing, right? So learn all you can about that. Those are called hidden jobs, okay? Like that's where the action is, and that's usually where they're hiring, okay? And the good jobs are there, right? The problem is that the posted jobs are something like 20% of all jobs that exist, and you've got like 80% of the candidates applying, all competing for those 20% of the jobs that are posted. So it's very fierce competition. That's why it might seem hopeless. That's why it seems like very, very hard. And they can afford to treat you like crap because they have an overabundance of candidates, right? So find all you can, learn all you can about the hidden job market. I've got courses and things. You could learn that with me, but one way or another, find out about that and make sure you're looking there. That's where the real gems are. Okay. And that's where, instead of going up against 800 people to get a job, you're going up against 2 or 3 to get a job. It's a lot more doable. Oh, you added another little part to your question. And is it worth filling out those work experience questions with part-time work experience in retail? I'm applying for tech jobs. Well, I would say no, but it really depends on your situation. If you have no other work experience, maybe it might make sense to show that you've at least had jobs and you've worked with people and you've lasted somewhere. You know what I mean? Even if it's a part-time thing in a different industry that, but generally, no, you want to give like pertinent work experience. Because anything that is kind of like totally not what they're looking for, there's a dilution effect where it like waters down, what you do have. You see, if you had one job that was like relevant and you just talk about that one job, you don't have much, but at least it looks like you're a fit. If you have that job, plus you worked in a circus, plus you worked in retail, plus you worked on a farm, plus you worked, in the railroad, that might make you seem like, well, you're not really a fit, And remember, this is just posted jobs. Posted jobs discriminate against generalists, right? So if you are a generalist like me, it's frustrating because you have a lot of transportable skills from various different areas, but it's hard to get an interview when you've got a resume like I just described. You've got like all kinds of eclectic experience, Mr. Pound Cakes. Oh, okay. I thought that said, some weird psychological thing happened. I thought that said baby cakes. So if you want to be real badass, get a tattoo that says baby cakes, like right across, like with the little tear, and then baby cakes like that. Especially if you want to hold down a white collar job. It says, when applying internally, can you get second chances if your first interview didn't go well? With my experience, the role already in the company, I thought I had it clinched and was underprepared. Tech is so hard to get into right now if you aren't already in it. I don't want to discourage anyone, but it's really brutal. Okay, two things. First of all, let's respond to that first. Mr. Poundcakes, most industries do a boom-bust cycle, right? That's just how it goes. Tech is no different, and we're in a bust cycle right now. And it's going to be around for a little bit, and then it's most likely going to come back. Just judging by history, whenever there's these waves of innovation and disruption, that's what you get. You get like a boom-bust cycle. And I've had to endure people in tech like saying all kinds of arrogant things during the boom cycle, saying, oh yeah, you guys, don't you wish you were like me and did tech? Then you'd be laughing. Look at my high salary job I just got. I've endured a lot of that. I mean, I don't endure it, but I people comment on my channel saying stuff like that a lot. And then now people are all, oh, there's no job. It's like, yeah, it's a boom bust cycle, That's how it goes in a lot of industries, and tech is one of them. So, knowing this, what do? Some people will choose to just completely leave the industry. Other people will choose to stick around, kind of maybe eat crow for like a year, maybe do some kind of menial thing, right? That's one thing. And then wait till it picks up again, right? Other people, they're tuned into the hidden job market. They have a lot of networking skills, social skills. They'll be fine. They'll get hired despite, an economic downturn or an industry downturn. They're going to do fine. There still are tech jobs going. I mean, people are still retiring. There's still attrition, right? That's a thing. And there's still new companies starting up, and there's still new ventures starting up. So, I mean, although the amount of hiring has gone down substantially, there's still jobs there, right? And what it's going to mean is that the people that get those jobs, generally speaking, will be the ones more tuned into this kind of activity, right? When it's when the industry is booming, that's when like anybody with like any kind of qualification or any accomplishment can just, stand in line and expect to be hired, no matter how bad they are in other areas, no matter how impossible they are to get along with, no matter how arrogant they are to get along with, no matter how they don't understand people or they don't understand business, which are usually severe handicaps, they'll still be given a job because the company just needs people, In thinner times, it's the people that tend to have all those other things that get hired. That's generally how it works. So what's the moral here? The moral here is like learn all you can about like networking, brush up on your soft skills as much as you possibly can. Because some developer or systems admin, yeah, that's fine, whatever. But a developer or systems admin that you can really get along with, that you want to deal with, that's a pleasure to deal with, where you just click and it's easy, to deal with them and to work with them, that's rare. That's much more rare, especially in IT. A lot of, I used to run a software company. A lot of people in IT, generally speaking, that's their flaw. That's their Achilles heel. It's the soft skills. And what people don't realize when they're coming out of school, apparently, is that, you might have great technical chops, but if you're insufferable to deal with, it's not going to work out. It won't work out in a job interview, and it won't work out on the job. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that that's what you have or anything. I'm just saying that this is where those skills really have an instant effect. And it's really demonstrated directly to candidates, people that are looking for jobs. In easier times, they would hire you regardless just because they need people. But now, that industry has been being treated like most other industries, where you need to have all these things together, right? So brush up on the soft skills is all I'll say. Learn about networking. You can learn about it through me. I've got courses and I got things, but one way or another, learn about that stuff, tune into that stuff, realize that stuff is even more important in the world than your technical skills. This is something that a lot of people in IT have a complete blind spot for. They think that just because I can do this technical thing, that someone will hire me regardless of how much of a fail I am in other areas. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. In the real world, why do people leave jobs? Do they leave jobs because of some technical reason? No, they leave jobs because they didn't get along with their boss. Right? Or you're working on a project and you got friction between you and the other people, different competing ideas, right? That's why people leave. These are not technical issues. These are human issues. You solve them with soft skills, right? So I don't want to preach too hard about this, but I wish I could shake a lot of people in IT and say, look, you may not value this stuff, but what you're missing is that it is more important than you think. The fact that you don't even respect it is causing you to not be good at it and not work at it. And that's what's hurting you. So that's what I'll say. Now, coming back to your first question here, can you get a second chance for an internal interview? Usually not, but there are exceptions. Okay? Usually you do an interview to get a first impression of somebody. If they make a bad first impression, generally that's your answer. You know what I'm saying? You made a bad first impression. Now, depending on details, there may be a second chance. You can go back. Or if you do something exceptional, you go to that person, you say listen, my friend, I just wanted you to know that the interview we did the other day, I don't feel it went very well. And I just want you to know that on that day, I was dealing with some stuff. There was a bunch of stressful things that had just happened in my life, and just that one day, just out of the blue. And so as a result, it affected me, and I felt that I didn't do a very good job in the interview. Would it be possible to have a do-over? If you give me another interview, you would probably get a much better and more accurate appraisal of me and how much I actually can bring to this role, if that's possible. I just want to see if there was any chance of that happening. Something like that. And sometimes people will say, sure, or you could just interview with someone else and have a different champion that's gonna advocate for you. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Somebody says, tell me please, while negotiating salary, should I tell number what I want? No, you shouldn't. Well, I mean, it depends. But if you're talking about like an interview, a job interview, they're going to say, how much do you currently make? They're going to say, What salary are you expecting? What do you need, right? Those are two different questions. In that case, you don't answer with a number, okay? Because that's bad for you. If you're negotiating, what that means is, like, where to start here. I was talking about negotiating a couple of days ago. We did an entire live stream on it. Negotiating is a separate thing from persuading. The problem is that when you go and get a lot of amateur advice, you look up negotiation online, like for salaries or something, you get a lot of people giving you advice about how to persuade somebody, right? And that's a separate thing to negotiation. Negotiation is getting an agreement signed. That's what it is. It's not about persuading anyone about anything. That's a separate thing. You're trying to get as much compensation as they possibly will give you, and they are doing the opposite. They're trying to pay you as little as you would possibly accept, right? So you have polar opposite incentives. So, you can make a very logical argument for like why it's reasonable that they should pay you what you're asking. And even if they agree with you, they'll say, yeah, that makes sense, but I'm sorry, we still only offer this much, It doesn't hold any water. Negotiation is like how you actually get a deal signed. And the way negotiation works is it's all about options. So the first thing you need to have is you need to have some other option than this job. Because if your only options are take what they give you or unemployment, you don't have any negotiating power whatsoever. You have no choice but to accept whatever they decide to give you. You can't force their hand, right? The way negotiation works is that you would have like other options lined up. So you'd say, okay, I've got an offer for say 50, right? And I'm trying to negotiate with you guys. You say you'll pay anywhere between 40 and 80, somewhere in there. I'm trying to get you to go for 70, right? Let's see if you can hire me for 70, if you agree to that, right? And if they say, no, we want you for 40, and we're not budging, then it's like, okay, well, I got this offer for 50 from another place, so goodbye, Like it's not about persuasion, it's about what you have the power to do, right? So if you want a lot of negotiating power, get a lot of other options. And then you don't have to take any crap from these people. Like that's essentially what it means. It's not about persuading anyone. It's like, nope, 40 doesn't work for me. It can't do 40. So it's either 55 or 50, I guess, or nothing. Like, that's the lowest I'll ever go. But, it almost doesn't make sense for me to take 50. So I'm going to insist on at least 55. There's no way that they can make you work for 40 if you got an offer in your hand for 50. You know what I'm saying? Or if you don't have that, maybe you got a whole bunch of job interviews lined up in the next 2 weeks. So it's like, I don't have to take this. I think I'm worth much more than that. I got a lot of other people that want to talk to me. The odds are is that one of them is going to work out, and it's not going to be for 40. I can tell you that. That's what negotiation is about, right? It's about forcing someone's hand and making an agreement. It's not about persuasion. So anyway, I've done several videos about all these various topics. Check them out, and it goes pretty in depth. My close personal buddy there, Mr. Pound Cakes, says, that makes sense. The second post was just a comment on the other guy's question and was disjoint from the first post. Sorry, this is my first time using Unfamiliar. Don't worry about it. You're doing fine, Mr. Pound Cakes, and I appreciate your participation. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. Yeah, we've reached it. Come on, guys, get in the chat. Give me some questions here, or I'll have to kill dead air, and you don't want that. That would mean plugging my courses and talking about life, the universe, and everything, and we don't want that. Yeah, on Mondays I do live streams on entrepreneurship, which is a thing that's open to everyone, but it makes sense for some people. Might not necessarily be the calling of other people. That's fine. But for some people, it's definitely a thing. It's an alternative to getting a job when it comes to making money, right? There are alternatives to working for an employer, right? That a lot of people take. There's the whole investing thing. There's entrepreneurship. That's where you learn to convert your value into cash directly, right? You have value. You can do things that other people can use, right? And it's an exploration of that. Like, how can I do that myself instead of relying on an agent to do it for me? That's what an employer is. An employer is an agent. They're in business, right? They understand how to convert skills and talent into cash, right? And you say to the employer, listen, I understand that you actually understand how to make cash, right? I have no interest in learning how to do that myself, but I understand you do know that. So I'll tell you what, I will work for you, and you give me, you convert my value into cash, and you keep a cut. So this is all the value I create, right? You take this much, and you give me this, and we'll call it a deal, right? Entrepreneurship is saying, like, okay, I can generate this much value. I want to learn how to convert all of that to cash myself, and then I keep it, right? That's the idea behind entrepreneurship. So a lot of people do that. In this day and age, it's never been easier to do that. Like, look at YouTube. We're talking over YouTube. A lot of people start YouTube channels, and there you go. They're entrepreneurs, So there's other alternatives too. I say this because somebody early on, was it Louisa? Somebody said, something about that, where like, I can't find a job, so I'm going back to school. Go back to school, try learning about entrepreneurship on the side, try doing, there's all kinds of options there when you think about it. Where were we here? Suppose one is, so Mr. Poundcake says, suppose one is applying internally for a job advertised at $75K on the low end. My current role is $55K, and I'm willing to accept that in this other role. Should I mention that in the interview? No, don't. See, they feel that if they publish their like salary range or part of it, and they've said like the low limit is 75, right? If you show up and you say, well, I'll do it for minimum wage, that like, or anything lower than their lower limit, that suggests a couple of things. That suggests that, first of all, you're not very good, because you're not, commanding the compensation of someone who does add that amount of value. You're saying, I generate this amount of value for you. You could make this much cash off me, but I only need you to give me this. It's like, what do you think when someone says like, here, you pay me $2 and I'll give you this thing that's worth $20,000 value. It's like, how do you regard that? You're skeptical, right? You think, I suspect it's not really worth 20,000, right? That's exactly how they feel. You're willing to work for 55. You think that's like appropriate for this? Well, then you probably can't deliver this much value like we're looking for. So that's how they're going to take it, usually. There's exceptions to everything, but that's the general rule, okay? There's a reason why they have lower limits. Anything lower than that is regarded as unreasonable. It doesn't make sense. They want someone in that role that they're happy with paying $75,000, because that person is expected to generate this much value. That's what they're looking for, right? They don't want someone that's going to generate this much value and then they only pay a little bit. They want someone who's going to do this, and if you're doing this, it doesn't make any sense to pay someone this much. You can't see my fingers. Does that make sense? So that's the thinking, right? So I would say, like, look, I wouldn't make any mention of salary. I wouldn't give numbers. That's what that's how you do this stuff. But if they offer you something like on the low end, you just say, great, let's do this, You know what I mean? And during the interview, if you're doing an interview with them, you would sort of indicate like, well, I know that this would be a bit of a step up for me, but I feel I can handle it. So, you're okay accepting something towards the lower end of the range because you're acknowledging that this is a bit of a step up. I'm not like, the shoe-in candidate for this, but you're still making a case for yourself. And they're saying like, okay, this is a person who could do it. They're going to be towards the bottom of the range, but, they could do it. And you make up in terms of like enthusiasm and fit for the role and all that kind of stuff. And that will hopefully work for you. Parafueros, if I'm saying that right, says, I've seen many of your videos and your vocabulary, phrasing, and clear line of thought really stand out. How did you develop this skill and how important do you think eloquence is in work? I'm an introvert who learned public speaking and learned a little bit of that stuff early on. It does not come naturally to me. It's sort of acquired skill. And I'm far from a good speaker. As you can probably tell from a lot of these live streams, I hesitate. I have big pauses. I go into like babbling and stuff, go off on tangents, and I'm not a good storyteller. So there's, everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses. I've had a lot of management positions over the years, so you have to develop some ability to communicate. Especially when you're in like executive management, you're not just sort of communicating for functional use. You're representing your organization to like everyone, to the public, to everyone. So there's a lot of like, very specific things you have to do there. So I've been like thrown into that, and there you go. And that's just my story. So like, it's an acquired skill. It doesn't matter how bad you are at speaking or how shy you are or hesitant you are. It's an acquired skill. It's like learning a sport or learning a musical instrument. You don't just read a book on it and say how it's done. You practice, you get thrown in and you have to do it a lot, right? And then over several years, people tend to get better at stuff, right? And if you work on it. So that's what it is. It's just like anything else. Thank you for the compliment. It's great to see that some people think my videos are good or whatever, but I don't consider it like any kind of like major accomplishment. I think that a lot of people end up picking up this stuff throughout the course of their lives anyway, right? To varying degrees. So if you actively work at it, you could like make a lot of progress in a very short amount of time, if you're actively working on it. So I would encourage you to do that. Communication skills really are like really up there for like opening doors for opportunities and having success, there's several soft skills like networking skills, communication skills, like being able to speak, this kind of thing. I mean, and there's a lot of things within speaking, right? Like, for example, you can maybe deliver a speech really well, but having a conversation with somebody, they don't really enjoy it. They don't really get anything out of it. Like that would be a problem. Or public speaking, you're okay talking to people one-on-one, but then you get up in front of like 20 people and then you instantly go to pieces and, you can't speak, So there's a lot of different types of like speaking and stuff, but the more you practice this, the more you learn, the better you get. And it's actually not as big of a challenge as, a lot of technical skills are. You go to school for years to learn like computer programming or, engineering or science or, whatever you're doing. Public speaking is like peanuts compared to that. It really is. Same with like interviewing for jobs. It's something you've got to work at a little bit, but it's nowhere near this huge challenge that sometimes people think it is. People think it's a challenge because they're not instantly good at it, nor can they get good at it in one day. So they think like, oh, I'm not good at that. I'll never be good at that. It's like, no. It's an acquired skill. You work at it, you improve. It's just that simple. So anyway, that's how that stuff works. I've done, I did some videos in the past about public speaking. They were wildly unpopular, by the way, but I did some videos on like how to develop public speaking skills and things like this. I've said this a bunch of times, but I actually went back to teach in, there was a community college and then there was a university in my hometown. And I did some teaching for about 5 years there. Like this is about, like it ended about 5 years ago or something. But I went back and I did some I'd never been a teacher before. And someone said, you should, like we're looking for instructors. Like I know you know this stuff. Have you ever thought of coming and teaching? And I said, no, I never thought about it. And I thought about it. I went away for a couple of days. I said, you know what? Let's do this. Like, and I was a teacher. I no training on education in my entire life. No understanding of like all the teaching methods or what to teach or whatever. But I went and became an instructor and like in a university in their business program. And it was actually pretty cool. Liked the teaching part, didn't like the administration part. So eventually I left, but the teaching part was fun. And I ran my classes like you're in the military, lots of rules and everybody has to pay attention. And I put people on the spot, and I was impressed by how students like just rose to that challenge, and I got a lot of students writing me like recommendations and stuff on LinkedIn for what that's worth, for my teaching. So that was really fun. I kind of miss a bit of that, actually. I'd like to do more of that. But thank you. Mr. Poundcake says, I see what you mean. However, I also understand that companies are incredibly risk averse, and I want to minimize that. I also know that they abuse the H-1B visa system. I don't know what that is. Is that an American thing? Like going to the US or something? To pay low wages. Yeah, listen, you know how you go to the store and you want to get the best possible price on everything, right? So if another store will like sell you the same thing for cheaper, you go there, right? Your behavior as a consumer is you want the lowest possible price, right? You don't regard yourself as a jackass for doing that or unfair to the store. You just think, hey, like I got to look out for me and mine kind of thing, Yeah, businesses are the same. I can't speak to what, if they're abusing something. I have no idea. And I, as I said, I'm in Canada. That sounds like it's in the States. I'm not sure. But so I can't speak to any abuse. But they will try and push for lowest possible wages, right? That's what companies do, just like you do when you go to the store. You don't pay $10 or something for something that someone else is selling for $2. It's the same thing, right? So employees for them are an expense. Just like they pay for electricity and rent and, like the equivalents of that stuff, they also pay for labor. It's just another expense they have. So just like you try to minimize those expenses, they do too. They don't want to pay an employee $10,000 a year when they can pay an employee $2,000 a year, like legally, right? Without any risk, and get the same thing. So it's exactly the same behavior. This is how they behave. They're going to try and get. But the thing is, if you have something to offer them that like genuinely helps them make more money, they will pay for that, right? The problem is, it's when the perception is that like, a person is as good as a person is as good as a person. They're all the same. We put them in the same job. They all make the same amount of money for us. So if we can get them for cheaper, then better, right? If you're competing with that stuff where the perception is it's the same, it's kind of hard to like make them see your like higher value. You know what I mean? That's what's going on behind the scenes, right? And I just saw the word frustrating, in your next sort of thing without reading it. It's like, yeah, if you play that game, it is frustrating. I'm saying that's why you've got to change the game a little, right? And play something where you're offering value to them, where they see like, this is what I can do, what I can bring, and it will help make you more money or save you more money. Then people are willing to pay more, right? Like sales is an example of that. Look at salespeople. It's kind of stupid how they do this, but I understand how they do this. It's like in sales, for whatever reason, they regard one person is not the same as another person who is not the same as another person. This person can bring in $25 million in a year for us. This person can probably only do 2 million, and this person can only bring in 0.1 million. They're all salespeople, but we regard these individuals like they will generate totally different results. So if that person is going to bring in, we think they can bring in 25 million, we'll offer them like $250,000 salary plus commission. Come and work for us. Make us that 25 million. We're happy to give you like, $500,000 compensation a year if you can bring in 25 million. They regard lawyers like that too. All lawyers are not the same. You got lawyers that work for free, and you got lawyers that work for like, $20 million retainer every month. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's the perception of like, what value they can add, right? So that's what's going on behind the scenes. It's based on their perceptions of these things. Rightly or wrongly, it's based on their perceptions. Mr. Poundcake says, it is frustrating that I'm not able to negotiate my wage and make myself more competitive without being chalked off as not able to provide the minimum amount of value. Now, in some industries, in some professions, or vocations, you are able to go solo. No employer thinks you're worth that amount, but you know that you are. Okay. Well, there's a challenge. I challenge you. If you think you're worth that much and you're in certain industries where this is possible, go solo. Go become a contractor and make 5 times the amount of money they're paying you. And then rub it in their face essentially, right? Like here, I'm taking the skills that I was offering you. You say I'm not worth 50, right? Well, now just by myself, by using those skills to do whatever, I'm now making 250. You know what I mean? Like, there you go. That's what some people do. And then they make their name as a contractor. They're dealing with the bosses. And the next thing you know, they're back as an employee and they're starting at 250, right? So, you know what I'm saying? Value is relative. Value is based on different people's perception of what you're worth. It's a guess. It's a guess. It's like a future prediction of how much they think you'll make for them, right? And a lot of people, especially as employees, you don't get to say how they use you. They tell you what to do in a role. So you might have you might have 2 PhDs. You might be able to invent cold fusion, something that will solve the world's energy problems. You have the brains to be able to do that. And you're looking for an R&D job. But no, they want to hire you to sweep the floor and pay you minimum wage. So fine. You don't have any say as to what the job is. They say, no, we don't want that. We're not working on cold fusion. We want you to sweep the floor. Right? And you say, okay, well, screw you. I'm going to go and I'm going to get some funding on my own. I'm going to develop cold fusion. I'm going to make trillions. I'm going to be the next Nikola Tesla, Now, obviously what I'm saying is exaggerated and weird, but the principle does apply. And I know a lot of people who have done that kind of thing. Someone says, tell me please if I have $26 Canadian at my job. And about a month ago, I asked my employer for a raise, $29 per hour. Now I received another offer, $33 per hour. What should I say to my employer? I don't know. Why are you talking pay with your employer? Get the job. You know what I'm saying? Like when you say I have 26 at my job, I mean they're currently paying you 26 an hour. Is that? And you asked for 29, but now you've received another offer for 30. Why would you be talking to your employer? Why are you not taking the 33 per hour job? The only thing you would say to your employer as you plan to leave is, look, I got an offer for 33, so I'm going to go, unless you can match it. Can you match it? No? Okay, bye. That's the only real thing that needs to be said, right? So it'll be some version of that. You go to your boss. You don't tell them anything before you've decided to leave. you decide what you want to do. Do you want to leave and take the 33 per hour? Because if you go back and say, like, I don't necessarily want to leave, but I've got an offer for this, can you match it? They say no, and then they fire you. So you better have that $33 an hour job. You better have accepted it, because if you tell your boss that you got an offer for 33, like way above what they're paying you, you know, they're either going to ignore you and just assume it's a lie, or they're going to fire you. You know, if they can't match it, they're going to fire you, you know? So that's usually how it goes. So just be careful you don't end up with either. The thing to do is to accept the 33 per job with $33 per hour. Say, yes, I'll take it. Then you go through all the offer stage, you sign the agreement, everything's fine, you're ready to start. And then the last thing you do is you tell your current boss, by the way, I'm out the door. You know, this is my letter of resignation as of this day. You know, I was offered this much. By the way, I'm assuming you can't match it, right? And the only time when you would put the brakes on the $33 an hour job is if they've said, yes, we can match it. They've given you an offer way above it, and they've signed it, and it's all ready to go, and it's in effect. That's the only time when you would like deviate from going to that $33 an hour job. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Jimmy Inco says, I'm a fresher in the tech field. My resume is quite good. However, my application gets rejected because of my low GPA. Any tips or tricks to target companies better? Are they asking for your grades? Is that why you're giving your GPA? I assume it is, because if it's not great, why would you be putting it on there if they're not asking for it? I assume if you're a fresher and you haven't had a career job, maybe that's why they might be asking you for your grades. Yes, you probably won't do any of this, but I'll tell you anyway. This is the posted job market. Posted job market is all the jobs you see that are posted online and everywhere. It's only 20% of all the jobs that are out there. Most jobs are not posted. You get those jobs through networking. Okay. Even if you're an introvert like me, you can kick ass and get all kinds of opportunities that are on the hidden job market. The jobs that are there, but are not posted, right? You access those via networking. The great thing about the hidden job market, and this is why I recommend everyone ditch the posted job market and focus your efforts exclusively in the hidden job market, is because there are no rules. You don't have to deal with the recruiter. You don't have to deal with HR. You're dealing directly with the managers, with the person you would report to, right? And if you have basic communication skills and you have some basic awareness of the stuff, you can really open up a lot of opportunities for yourself. Okay? So listen, what I'd recommend for you, Jimmy, is go and research something called the hidden job market, how you get those jobs, okay? And then start developing those skills, because that'll bypass all of this crap. Your GPA won't even be mentioned. You know, it won't even be a thing that people think of, right? Because they've talked to you, they've spoken to you, they know your stuff. They're hiring you for different reasons, not your resume, not your GPA. They're hiring you because you're awesome to deal with, because you're highly professional, because you clearly know your stuff, and you're the person that they want to work with. You know, that's why you're being hired. Now, if you're interested in pursuing this, okay, I've got a bunch of free stuff on my channel. Start with ChatGPT, okay, or Google or whatever. Just type in screw it, let's do this. I always feel I need to do this just to tell everyone. Here's ChatGPT, okay? Let's start with the basics. Of all the jobs that are out there, how many of them, like what percentage, are actually posted publicly that I could discover with, like, say, an internet job search? Okay, like you don't have to take my word for anything, just, this is the very basic beginning of like looking into stuff, okay? Right? It keeps changing its tune. The answer is it's about 15 to 20%, but so every time you ask this thing, it varies. So here it's saying 30 to 40% of jobs are posted online. That means 60 to 70% of jobs are filled through other methods. They're not posted. And, it lists a bunch of things, which are all different versions of networking. Direct outreach, referrals, internal, it's all networking, right? Different types of networking. Okay, so that's the first thing, right? And then your next question would be like, how do I, okay, here, this would be the next question. So what is the hidden job market? Okay. Right. They say internal hires and promotions. Yeah, they're hired internally, not from internally. It's because the boss just hired somebody. Networking and direct outreach, employee referrals. I don't know what that is. But anyway, it's a thing. Look into this. You don't have to play this game that you're playing to get a job. None of it. Okay. All the best jobs are in the hidden job market, and it's a lot of a easier, more pleasant process too. I'm just going to adjust my camera brightness here because I need to look like I'm being broadcast from heaven, apparently. Let's see. Okay, now I've got a course. You can see it on the screen. I walk you through all that if you want to learn that stuff with me. And that's something that I have helped hundreds and hundreds of people with who've taken this course. But one way or another, learn about that, and that'll open up so many more options for you where you can get hired. Parafueros says, thank you for sharing your knowledge. Even with over 500,000 subscribers, you still go live for 20 people for an hour-long chat with Mr. Pancake. Mr. Pancake? Mr. Pancake. That's the mentality that makes someone to succeed. Yeah. Well, someone was very graciously complimenting me on my speaking ability. This is why I don't command more people, because, you listen to me babble for like an hour and it's like, So that's why I only have 20 people here today. But I appreciate every single one of you doing this. Mr. Poundcake says, thank you for taking our questions. It is nice having an inside guy to explain the nuances and to provide context to a lot of these things. Well, thank you. I appreciate your kind words. That's great. That's what I'm going for. So it's good to know that that's rubbing off a little. And I wish you every bit of luck. Like the more you know, the further you'll go. And I got a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I feel that like a lot of this stuff should be covered in high school. When you're like 18 years old or whatever, you come out of high school, what do they teach you, if anything, about like getting a job? They teach you like the absolute basics of like a job interview, right? Okay. For a lot of people, at 18, maybe that's good. But a lot of people who are 18 years old aren't complete morons. They're capable of understanding a little bit more. You would teach them about networking. You would teach them about the hidden job market. You wouldn't just have these be like words. You would actually explain what it is. I think it's because a lot of people in education don't understand these concepts themselves. So they're ill-equipped to teach them. It's like, I'm a generalist, and it's harder getting a job when you're a generalist. You've done like a lot of different things. The way recruiters think, they regard that as a negative. They say, oh, you haven't spent 30 years in one job, so therefore, how could you know what you're doing? And it's like, well, yeah, the reality is, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen people struggle over here with a problem that, unbeknownst to them, has been solved 50 years ago over here. But you don't get a lot of cross-pollination between these two industries. Well, I've worked in both. And what I was able to do is I was able to take a solution I saw from here and transplant it over here. Everybody thinks you're a genius. It's like, I'm not a genius. I've seen people that have solved this. They're the ones that are like, deserve the credit. I'm just stealing their solution and I'm applying it in a place where nobody has heard of that. That's the value of being a generalist. That's what generalists can do for companies. But you try telling that to a recruiter. That's not how they think. And I know this because I've trained recruiters in university. It's like, that's not part of the doctrine. They're taught a very specific thing, about how you value people. And it's like, it doesn't include that. This is why I got a lot of jobs when I was younger through networking, through the hidden job market, because it's like, once you talk to a boss and you explain what, you can do or whatever, it's like they go, yes, that's what I want, But like you say that to a recruiter, it just falls on deaf ears. They go, no, you're not really a fit, So I got a bit of a chip. I've had a chip on my shoulder for many years about that, That's also why I think more people should be tuned into this. As it is, the people that understand this stuff are either extroverts from the outset, or they're people that are like later on in their careers. They're maybe in their 40s, 50s. That's when they tune into this stuff. And it's really a shame that a lot of the young people, they're ignorant to this, Some of them. A lot of extroverted young people are tuned into this, even more so than I am, and they really clean up, right? Those are the ones that are getting hired instead of you, right? A lot of times. Is it because they're more capable or they're smarter? No, it's because they know these things. They know networking, they know soft skills. It isn't a conspiracy. It isn't slimy, this like cheating. It's that they recognize what actually matters in the real world, and they're more tuned into it. It's more than just technical skills. Jimmy says, yes, thank you so much. It was helpful. Good. I'm glad. How long does it usually take to process a raise after my manager has agreed that I deserve it and has already sent the request to upper management? It's been 1 month since then. I don't know. I mean, what industry or what country are you in? I have no idea. It can vary. Like in the government, generally speaking, whatever country you're in, it'll take a while, right? In other areas, it'll take less than the government, but it could happen in a day, or it could happen in like 3 months. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the average time is, so I don't want to guess. But it's been a month. Maybe you should like follow up if you haven't done so already. Just say like, just following up just to see, what's the progress, or when can we expect to hear something, and where are we at? Like, at what stage is this at? Is it being held up for someone's approval, or, that kind of thing, right? It doesn't hurt to do that stuff. So that would be a good idea. Yeah, Mr. Pancake, LOL. Thank you for your support and time. You're welcome. So there we go. There are 16 viewers here. We're reaching the hour-and-a-half mark. Let me know if you guys have any last-minute questions. I'll be here for another few minutes, depending on if anyone has any burning questions. In the meantime, while we're waiting for any last questions, check out these courses, especially this one, for the people here. If you are confused as to where the jobs are, how to get them, that kind of thing, check out that course. It's got how to get a job in the posted job market and how to get a job in the hidden job market. And it's specifically tailored for introverts. If you're an extrovert, this stuff works just as well, but it's mainly for introverts. It goes through a lot of the concepts that you may or may not have picked up on. And then it gives you a way to do networking, which is based more using social networking rather than more direct, like in-person type stuff. So if that's what you're looking for, check that out. There's a link in the description box below. And all the courses that I've done videos about them. So, it's like an FAQ. So it answers questions about the course. So you know exactly how it works, what you get, what you can expect. And you know all of that before going into it. So check those out. The other thing that people might be interested here is this one. That's the communication skills course that gives you above average communication skills. that's where I put everything that I learned on my journey from being a supervisor to being a CEO. Everything I learned along that journey about communication skills, I put that into that course. Okay, so check that out. Once again, link in the description. And if you're interested in more of the entrepreneurship or you care about business, business is the scientific study of how to make money, by the way. That's what it is. Pretty useful thing to know. Check out this course, my $100 MBA. It's actually more of a program than a course. Not $100,000, $100. You get access to the same information as if you took an MBA, Masters of Business Administration. Essentially, you get a reading list of all the textbooks that they use in prominent MBA programs around the world, like places like Harvard Business School in their MBA program. And I have several videos that guide you through it. I give you my take on several topics and things. So check it out. If you just want the knowledge, what that'll do is it'll be a tremendous help if you want to do an entrepreneurial type venture. And if you want to understand your employer, like what's important to them, how they think, what they regard as good and what they don't care about. If you're looking for that, that'll teach you that too, if that's kind of a goal you have. Okay, so check those out. Link in the description. A lot of people have taken those. They're quite popular. How do you say that? Tejas says, how to handle criticism. Well, hopefully gracefully, right? But that's easier said than done. So it comes with practice, right? You know, what you do is you sort of, it helps having like a Superman outfit or a superhero outfit under your shirt. You can just like that and then go in with your fists, you know, that's kind of, if it's in person, right? If it's in person. If it's not in person, it's like, you know, virtual, then you throw your monitor across the room, you know, that helps too. No, you handle criticism, you say like, look, you know, I don't see it that way, or, you know, thanks for your opinion, you know, kind of type thing, you know, and just handle it gracefully, right? One thing you're going to find if you try and do something, anybody who does something knows this. No matter what you do, no matter what it is, someone somewhere is going to have a problem with you. They're going to hate you. They're going to insult you. They're going to tell you you're going to fail, right? That's just comes with the territory of doing anything, right? Some of my earlier videos on this channel, I would say things like, you know, always remember, you're awesome, you know? And I got hate for saying that, you know, how dare you tell me I'm awesome? You don't know me, you know, you arrogant prick, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to get criticism no matter what you do, right? It's like background noise, right? So being able to recognize that it comes with the territory. Someone who does something a little out of the ordinary, you're going to get criticized for it. Someone who tries to accomplish something, you're going to get criticized for it. Someone who says they're going to try and do something a little out of the ordinary, you're going to get criticized for it. You know, that's just life. You know, and you've got to be able to recognize that's all it is. It actually is a good thing in the sense that, you know, if you're never being noticed, no one will criticize. You won't get criticism. You'll get nothing because no one even notices you or cares about you. But if you're putting something out there or you're trying to do something, you're obviously getting noticed if you're getting criticism, you know? So you can look at it that way. Someone says, when will you have the next like live chat or life chat? I'm kind of talking about life, the universe, and everything right now. I'm going to be live on Monday. I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So you come back on Monday and on my channel, and we'll be doing this again. Tio says, hello. Today I had a second job interview and I got hired thanks to your advice. Thanks for the support. That's great to hear, Tio. That's great. That's wonderful news. And thank you for sharing. I'm happy for you, and you deserve it. And I wish you every bit of luck in your new job. So that's awesome to hear. Femi Williams says, I offered the option between online interview versus face-to-face interview. Which is better? I have an interview with GE next week and was giving both options, but I picked the face-to-face option. Face-to-face is better. It's more work and it's more of a pain in the ass, but it's better. The best way to interface somebody with somebody or communicate with them is face-to-face. Failing that, then a video interview, like a teleconferencing, like video call, and then failing that, a voice call, like on the phone in real time, and failing that, an email, and then failing that, a DM. That's usually like the order of things, right? So if you have the option, the way to make the best impression, the way to signal that, you care about them and you value your interaction with them, the best option is always face-to-face. But the flip side, of course, is that it's more inconvenient. It's the most inconvenient, but it's the best way to communicate with somebody. If ever you wondered why executive managers fly all around the world to have meetings with people in person, even in this day and age where you can have a video call and it looks pretty good, it's for that reason. There's no substitute. And generally speaking, they're going to regard the people they interview face-to-face a lot stronger and a lot more seriously than the people they interview remotely. But that's a good question, and I'm glad you chose face-to-face. Hopefully it works out for you. There's no guarantee that any of these things work out, but you give yourself the best possible chance. And if nothing else, you will, it's things like this that give you the most experience at doing interviews. The more you do, the better you get, the more confident you feel. That's how it works. So that's another reason to pick face-to-face for all of these whenever you're given the option. I used to work for GE way back when, under Jack Welch. That was fun. And I'll leave it at that. Okay, we've got to the end of the chat. Femi says, thanks, I have to travel 4 hours for the interview next week. I will join you on Monday and come with questions. Well, hopefully it works out for you, Femi. Like, listen, there's no guarantee of anything, but, I don't know what your situation is exactly, but it's a good thing. You're going to do several good things. Regardless of how it turns out, you're going to give yourself the best possible chance, and you're getting hard experience doing interviews. That's always good. Try and do something fun, like listen to music or listen to an audiobook if you can, like on the 4-hour trip. Just try and have fun with it. Try and make it as enjoyable as possible and do your best. And that's all you can do. And, you keep doing stuff like this, and sooner or later, something will happen and it will work. Okay, thanks everyone. You guys are awesome. I will see you Monday. Take care of yourselves. Have a great weekend. Try to do something fun, even though you may not feel like it in the throes of job search. Just force yourself to do a fun activity. Get centered, and it's an investment in yourself. You will be able to kick ass next week at job search if you just recharge the battery a little. Okay, so try and do that. I will see you on Monday. Take care.